Okay, so in the two previous videos, we solved for the SS using the computational formula and the definitional formula. In this video, we will take the SS and use that to describe variability in two different ways. The first way to describe variability is by solving for the variance. And the variance actually isn't very important or very useful alone, that is, but it's still important to know and learn how to solve it. So the variance is the average squared deviation scores, and whether you have a population or a sample, you're going to solve for the variance slightly differently. So if you have a population, your formula is your SS over N, which is the number of scores in your population. And if you have a sample, it'll be equal to SS over N minus 1. Now the second way to describe variability is the more useful one and the one that you will be using pretty much all the time, and that is the standard deviation. And the standard deviation is the typical or standard distance of all the scores from the mean. So the standard deviation is just the square roots of the variance. So for a population, you find your variance, which is SS over N, and you square root it. And for a sample, it's SS over N minus 1, which is the variance, and then you just square root it. And the notation for standard deviation is also different, whether it's a population or a sample. If you have a population, you will see standard deviation denoted as a lowercase sigma. And for a sample, the standard deviation will be denoted as a capital S, capital D. Now for an example, we will go back to our data set that we've used in the previous videos. That's 2, 4, 1, 5, and 3. So to solve for this standard deviation, the first step is to solve for the SS, which, if you remember correctly, the SS is 10. And the next step is to solve for the variance. So we have our N equals 5. So if this were a population, our variance would be 10 over 5, which is equal to 2. And if this were a sample, we would have 10 over 4, which is equal to 2.5. Now, the final step to solve for the standard deviation is to simply take the square root of these scores. So if there were a population, our standard deviation would be square root of 2, which is 1.41. And if there were a sample, it'd be the square roots of 2.5 equal to 1.58. So there is, instead of doing this by hand, there is a way to do this using a graphing calculator, and I will show you how to do that now. So to find the standard deviation using a graphing calculator, the first thing you want to do is click the Stat button, and under the Edit tab, you'll want to click 1 for edit. And once you're on to the screen that has all the lists, you want to plug in your numbers into one list. So on mine it's list 1. I have 2, 4, 1, 5, and 3. So once those are in a list, you want to click the Stat button once again, but this time go over to the Calc tab and hit enter on 1var stats. So once 1var stats is up, you want to hit seconds and 1 to select the L1 button. And once that is done, you want to press enter, and this screen will pop up. And the SX option is the standard deviation for your sample, and the sigma x is your standard deviation for a population.